the stage, there are pictures of hostages. Many of you will know that the board has been running a campaign for a few months now, highlighting the plight of the hostages, and dozens of synagogues all over the country and other community organisations have adopted hostages and are supporting their families and keeping the issue in the public attention. And we thought it very appropriate to have two of those hostages posters here this evening.
Thank you very much, Michael. So we're going to start with 2-minute opening addresses without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. Remember, it's 1 point for a correct challenge, but I have to take away a point for an incorrect one. The order of speakers will start with Michael.
Good evening. Deputies, ladies and gentlemen, 213 days ago, our world changed. Every day since, Jew hatred has grown. This is the most challenging period in Jewish life that any of us can remember. Today, we need to stand united behind strong, effective leadership, and I will bring us together. To paraphrase JFK, divided, there is little we can do, but united, there is little we cannot do. Appalled by the anti-Israel occupations on campuses, I met with the Vice-Chancellor and the Chair of Council at Leeds University. They agreed all appropriate courtesies will be restored to the chaplain, no outside activists to be allowed on the anti-Israel camp, and that they remain within the law. They agreed that intimidation of Jewish students must stop now. Moving forward, if you elect me, I will fully involve you, the deputies. My President's advisory group will include experts and deputies to advise me and support the work of the board. My media response team will have trained people, including deputies, to present our community's position. Visiting over 200 schools, many deputies complained about culture. We must be more inclusive, particularly welcoming women, younger deputies, and those who never get an opportunity to be involved. When I become treasurer, we had increasing losses. Now we're breaking even. I will be a president who will listen, a president who will lead. I am a serious leader for serious challenge, asking for your vote. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Michael. Sheila.
Thank you. My name is Sheila Giewolb, and I'm proud to be standing for President of the Board of Deputies of British Jews. I have been a Vice President and Senior Vice President, and for over 40 years in a personal capacity, I have gone all over the UK speaking to thousands of non-Jewish school children about our practices, beliefs and culture to dispel the myths and misconceptions that lead to Jewish race hate. I was in Essex recently talking to 400 children leading a Jewish assembly. At the end, one young man came up and said, my mum and my grandma are Jewish and I'm really proud, and it was wonderful. And then he said, do you know, when we go to London, my mum tells me I can't tell people I'm Jewish because there'll be trouble. I could have cried, and it has to stop. The board have not been visible enough in supporting and defending and protecting our community. As the next president, I have 3 priorities. First of all, we need to challenge the myths and biased reporting we're seeing every day on the TV, in the papers, and on TikTok. We need to shout louder than our enemies. We need to have positive messages. What are we afraid of? Secondly, we need to stand up to the vile hate marches that are going on every week from Cardiff to Carlisle and now on the campus. We need to show strength through solidarity. And thirdly, we need to educate about being Jewish, educate about Israel to combat all the ignorance that's out there. And we have over 300 amazing deputies who can help get this work done. So I reiterate, we need to challenge the lies and the biased reporting. We need to show strength through solidarity against the hate marches, and we need to educate about being Jewish and about Israel. And together, deputies, we can get this done and be proud and loud about being Jews in the UK today.
Thank you, Sheila. Phil.
Well, thank you, Matthew, and good evening, everyone. I'm Phil Rosenberg. You know, in the last few months, we've had a lot of questions, but I've got a question for you this evening, which is, where do you see this community in 20 years? Right now, things look a bit bleak. We have rampant anti-Semitism on our streets, online, in the media, and our students are running a gauntlet of derision on our campuses. Whatever we're doing, we need to do more. We need new energy, new resolve, and new ideas. And that's the sort of president I will be. I have unparalleled experience in politics, the media, faith, and diplomacy, and I will take our case to everywhere that it needs to be heard, whether that's fighting anti-Semitism, standing up for Israel, or defending our religious freedoms. But we can't just be negative, we need to be positive. And I will roll out a best-in-class program of education and events that celebrate Judaism across the country and build bridges across our community and across different communities as well. I have a whole manifesto of ideas that are costed, phased, and deliverable. But I won't do any of this alone. I'll be working with our 300 deputies and 200 institutions so that together, punching at our strength, we can raise the tide for everyone. My election would send a powerful signal to our community, to our young people, and to the wider society that our community faces the future not with timidity, but with confidence, energy, and resolve. And it's for that reason that I ask for your vote on the 12th of May. Thank you, good evening, and Yisrael Chai. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Amanda.
I'm Amanda Bowman, and as your president, I'll build a better, bolder Board of Deputies, a stronger, more united community that celebrates and supports our rich diversity and heritage. For the last 6 years as your vice president, I've been honoured to serve, securing our and by tackling anti-Semitism, combating extremism, and safeguarding religious freedoms. I've stewarded our political engagement and championed positive interfaith relations. As your president, our Board of Deputies will tackle immediate threats head-on, and both deputies and communities will be empowered to shape a vibrant Jewish life in the UK. Fueled by the events in Israel and Gaza, we face mounting threats to social cohesion and growing polarisation on our campuses and our streets. So let me be clear. I'll fiercely defend and protect the freedoms, rights and security of all British Jews, building on the work I've done since the 7th of October with the police, the CPS, with transport authorities to ensure that we're kept safe and that we feel safe. And while the temptation may well be to hunker down, I want us to live our board's mission to be the voice of British Jews, to look outwards beyond our community, to build bridges across faith groups, across our communal organisations, and of course with all deputies, to deliver our work strategically in a spirit of openness and respect. The late Chief Rabbi Lord Sachs said that Shema really means to listen. And as your president, I really will listen. I'll listen to your concerns, your ideas, your hopes, and I'll empower you to fulfill them. I'll create a space where diverse opinions are respected, because by bringing unique perspectives to the table, our diversity becomes our strength. I've engaged deputies in every step so far, so why change a proven formula? And so I ask you to back me for a better Board of Deputies, to build a future where our Jewish identity flourishes, where we make our voices heard, and where our community stands proud and strong. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda, and thanks to all the candidates for their admirable timekeeping so far. I promised I wouldn't talk a lot about the zoo, so let me start off with an initial question, perhaps starting with Sheila, but I want to ask each of the candidates, which animal would you be and why? One sentence.
I am a lioness. I defend my cubs. I protect what is mine. The Jewish, sorry, that's more than one sentence, isn't it? But no, definitely a big growl and and go for it. Yeah.
Thank you. Michael.
Sorry, I haven't got a mic.
Yes, I think we're sharing mics.
Okay.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Sorry.
It's because it's up there.
Yeah.
No, Michael,
Yeah.
I need it to go.
I will be a cheater because they're fast. I've run a marathon. I know how to lead, get up there at the front. I wasn't at the front of the marathon. And that is why I believe that that's why I will choose a cheater. Thank you.
Thank you. Phil.
I'd be an elephant, fast, dry-sighted, strong and visible.
Amanda.
And I think I might be a chimpanzee. A bit cheeky sometimes, but definitely very intelligent.
Excellent. Right. So second question, and then we'll throw it open to everyone. Starting with you, Amanda. At the end of your tenure as president, what would you like people to say about?
I'd like them to be able to say that I brought people with me, that they really felt that as deputies they were part of the Board of Deputies, that they'd done everything that they wanted to do, and that they'd seen real progress, whether that's progress in the amount of education we've been able to share, the levels of anti-Semitism starting to reduce, the opinions about Israel changing somewhat because people knew more about Israel and what was going on, that extremism was going down, but importantly also that because of the work that we'd done together, that Jewish people were proud and able to be out living their lives fully and completely.
Thank you very much. Phil, what would you like people to be saying about you at the end of your tenure?
Well, I have a very full manifesto, which I know some of you have seen. I think, though, of all of those things, the thing I'd most like people to think about is a change board of deputies, one which isn't seen as a sort of cantankerous talking shop, but one where deputies are genuinely empowered, where we scale our reach and relevance and impact right around the country with all 300 deputies and all 200 institutions that are members of the board punching at their strength.
Thank you very much. Sheila.
Am I allowed to sing? RESPECT, that's what the board will gain from me. We need respect back to our communities. We need people not to ask me when I go around the country, but who is my deputy? Do we have one in the synagogue? We need to get out there. We need to spread the word. I would like a tenure under my presidency for people to say, the Board of Deputies, amazing. How do I sign up? That's what I'd like to see.
Thank you, Vo. I didn't actually say whether you could or couldn't sing, so we'll clarify that later. Michael, please don't sing.
Sing if he likes.
I'm tone deaf. Number one, I want the universities to be a safe haven for Jewish students. That has to be the most important thing that we can do. I want our young people. A friend of mine rang me today. He went into Brent Cross with his grandson, and his grandson took his kippah off because he's scared to wear it. And again, I want us to be able to walk the streets with the kippah on. I want young people and women to be involved in the board, in every aspect of the board. And I want the shuls to have good knowledge about what we're doing in particular and really feel that they're involved as part of the way forward for the Board of Deputies. It's important also with that we have financial stability, and I will guarantee that we do run a balanced budget going forward. And I hope that people will say that I've given good leadership. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you all very much. Questions from the floor? There's one straight away at the front.
Richard Cohen, Loughton Federation Synagogue. I'd like to take a quick look at the greatest letter that was ever written to the Board of Deputies, namely the Balfour Declaration, Part 3, which is probably the least known aspect of it, in which Arthur Balfour says that nothing shall be done that shall prejudice the rights of existing Jewish communities, presumably outside the Jewish homeland. Who do you think he was talking to? Zionists, the rest of the world? And do you think those words still have resonance today? If you don't want to answer the question, I'm quite happy for Matthew to do so.
That's a very generous offer, thank you. Start with you, Phil.
Well, I think it was a reflection of the knowledge of anti-Semitism. Within living memory, we'd had the pogroms in Eastern Europe, and I think there was this sense that Britain, at the time as an imperial power custodian, wanted to guarantee that that was a right, and to reassure British Jews that this didn't mean they would suddenly be seen as aliens in their own country, which was, I think, some of the fear of British Jews at the time. The truth is, it wasn't lived up to. Particularly, might I say, following that, we had the Holocaust in Europe, and we had Jews chased out of Arab lands in Iran. So it was in that sense not something that Britain was able to guarantee. And it's a mark of failure of the international community that we continue to see that Jewish lives don't always seem to have the same weight, and Jewish people don't always seem to count. So we need to continue. It means the importance of organisations like ours is to continue to raise the case, to continue to make the case for Jews in this country and around the world.
Thank you. Sheila.
Brilliant question, Richard. I'm not as familiar with the history of it, and I know that the British Jews were unhappy with supporting the idea of it, and I think it could have been for the government to know that we wanted to be able to be proud Jews in this country, and that has continued, okay? We're very lucky in this country. I go around telling children about the support we get from British government, and it's not the same in every country where Jews live. So we've been there for the board. I went to the archives and saw the first minutes, and there were a list of complaints about different people in the community, and there's 260-year-old minutes, so nothing changes. But we're really lucky we're here today, for Jews to feel established and proud and safe in this country, and to support Israel as well. I think that's what's most important.
Thank you. Amanda.
Thanks, Richard. Well, I think I'd like to talk about whether it's still relevant today, because I think it's absolutely still relevant today, whether that's about ensuring that Israel is a plural society for all Jews and the impact of that on British Jews. But when we talk about protecting our lives as British Jews, it's what I've been doing for you for the last 6 years, whether that's talking to the National Medical Examiner around the introduction of the new medical examiner scheme, whether it's about protecting burials, whether it's been about advocating. We're doing that all day, every day. It's what the Board of Deputies done, and it's what I continue to do for you. That, alongside the increasing anti-Semitism and polarisation that we're seeing, makes the words of the Balfour Declaration all the more relevant.
Thank you. And Michael.
For me, there was anti-Semitism at the time of my great-grandparents, at the time of the Balfour Declaration, and my grandparents. What I would say to you is that we have to have a strong Israel, and we will have a strong diaspora. That is absolutely very, very important for the future. Jewish lives have got to be safe here in the country, and we have got to work to that above all else. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another question. Shall we go to the middle?
Elections are like really weird job interviews. So to that end, I'm going to ask a job interview-esque question. One of the vital parts of the board presidency that's not really been asked about so far is teamwork. The board president chairs not only the Board of Deputies, but also the board's trustee board. Can you tell us about how, A, you've worked in a team, which is a really important thing, and something that deputies have taken issue with in recent times about teamwork, and B, what non-executive roles you've held and how you can transfer those skills from those non-executive roles to your presidency from day one? Thank you.
So those are very good questions, but I know you've smuggled in 3 questions, and I think it's worth, second one breaks into 2. I think it's worth everyone answering it, so I'm arbitrarily going to say, could everyone answer, but let's keep it 30 seconds apiece.
Can I ask what because I didn't get the 3 questions.
So I think the 3 questions were...
Well, the 2 that I have were, how have you worked in a team, and how will your if you've held non-executive roles, how that work will transfer from what you've already done to the board presidency on day one.
Brilliant. 30 seconds, Michael.
I've worked in a team. I employed 9,500 people. I had no choice but to build and develop teams, and I sat there chairing the business, and we really worked properly together in all aspects of the business, as you can imagine. For those who don't know, I was in the shoe business, ran a business called Barrett Shoes, Saxone and Dulcis. I'm sure you've all worn some shoes and you've probably got some blisters. As far as non-executive roles, I've served on the board of Town Centre Securities, which is a public property company. I served on the board of Leeds University for 13 years and had 6 years as the deputy chair of council, and I've been involved in Maccabi.
Brilliant. Thank
you.
Amanda.
Thanks, Noah. I've been in teams, I've led from the front, I've led from within, and I can honestly say that that some of the best teams I've been part of have been during the time I've been at the board. When I first came into the board, I was part of the BODSA team, the Board of Deputies Social Action. I then became chair of that, and if you ask the members of my division, I think that they'll say that they've enjoyed being part of my team with the division. In terms of my non-exec roles, I've been a trustee of several different charities, Jewish and non-Jewish, and I've worked in big organisations and small organisations, but I think for the board's perspective, I know how to leverage resource and to make the most out of small budgets. We're a small charity, the board, and so it's really important that we do that as professionally as we can.
Thank you.
Not from day one, okay.
Sheila.
Teamwork. I've led the Community and Education Division for 3 years. I led the International Division for 3 years. I had everybody involved in workshops. I think people on those divisions would give me good testimonies. In fact, some of them have. I have expanded the Jewish Living Experience exhibition through teamwork with 5 copies all over the UK. And I go round and I help with the launches and I bring people together to help educate about being Jewish. I haven't been a non-executive director, but I am on the board of the Religious Education Council of the UK. I'm an executive member of NASACA. I'm a member of the Lord Lieutenant's Faith Council, where we have interfaith events and awards ceremonies every November. I'm a judge on that event. And the executive, it needs to be more transparent. It needs to be led by the divisions through the elected executive members so that all deputies know what goes on and we don't get 3 lines. Thank you.
Phil.
Thank you very much. Well, I've been involved in many teams, but probably the most relevant one is my experience of 16 years in and around the Board of Deputies, including 9 as its Director of Public Affairs, building the strongest public affairs team in the community before handing over to the much better Daniel Sugarman to lead it. And I worked in that time with all 4 living presidents and many of the people on this table in a really, really good and collaborative way. In terms of non-exec roles, I've had local roles in terms of residents associations. I've had international roles in terms of the World Jewish Congress and being part of their Jewish diplomatic corps. But probably the most relevant is being an elected local councillor in Camden, which gave me frontline experience of politics, meant that I got to know many key figures, including one of the MPs in Camden, Keir Starmer. And if elected, I'd take that relationship through into the next stage of our work.
Thank you all very much. I think the main thing I draw from that is 30-second answers are never going to work. Lady in purple at the back.
Good evening. Vicky Harris, Hampstead Garden Suburb Synagogue. The Board of Deputies' purpose is to promote and protect the Jewish way of life. Are constitutional changes needed to ensure the board meets the real needs of the Jewish community? And in achieving that, what difficulties would you expect to encounter?
Great, thank you. Constitutional changes. Sheila.
Thank you, Vicky. Yes, we've been there before. We managed to have an effective change in 15 minutes at the last plenary because it was so fundamental to the elections that are coming up. Yes, we need to revisit it. Yes, we have a constitution committee that needs to work with honorary officers. So we do need to look at it. I can't go through it piece by piece, but absolutely we need to revisit it and make it relevant for today's board.
And if you were to think of one constitutional change you'd like to make?
Wow, okay. We need to revisit, I think, the fact that we now have Zoom post-COVID. We need to look at everything within the Constitution that affects the hybrid working of the way we are, in whatever capacity that is.
Thank you very much. Michael.
Thank you. So the answer is yes, it does need to change. We need to revisit parts of it. We need to make sure that there's a proper constitution, well, that we have a proper constitution. We have a constitution committee that's made up for the breadth and depth of the organisation. And to approach it, we need to look at slicing and dicing it. Don't try and do everything all at once. Just approach things bit by bit by bit. And as far as the one thing that I assume you're going to ask me for, the election process. What I would do is have the election for the presidents first, or the president, and then those presidents, because we've got a fantastic group of 4 people here, and if they don't become, the 3 who don't become president, then have an opportunity to stand as vice presidents and have it 6 weeks later, or whatever time period the Constitutional Committee think is a fair and reasonable time. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Phil.
Well, I think the Constitution needs quite a lot of work, but we've seen 2 very good faith attempts to make wholesale changes that ended up sucking so much time out, and the board cannot afford to navel-gaze. With the existing Constitution, we fought anti-Semitism in Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party, prescribed Hamas and Hezbollah, worked with government to do so, and took the community through coronavirus, so we can work within it. What I would do is set up a Constitution working group to make and hierarchise the changes we need to make, looking at which ones can be done easily and simply, so we don't take up loads of time, but we pass them, as we have done in recent months, relatively quickly and efficiently. And I think where there's broad consensus, we can do that without distracting ourselves from our core mission. If I get to do, I'm going to do 1.5 constitutional changes. One is to make permanent electronic voting. I think that's really important, and it speaks to the modernised board. The second one, and I've put this in my manifesto, is I'd like to invite schools to become members of the Board of Deputies. Schools like this one. You come here and you see the amazing presence that a school has in our communal life. Schools are not currently represented on the Board of Deputies, and if we get them in, we create a leadership pipeline from schools to youth movements, to UJS, and to young professional organisations, creating a young leadership pipeline in our community, and I think that's something we need to do.
Thank you very much. Amanda.
Thank you. Your question, Vicky, was can we promote and protect the Jewish way of life with the current constitution? And I think we can, but there are certainly things that I would want to change within the constitution to change the way we do things rather than what we do. But don't underestimate what we've achieved over the last 3 years, because we have managed to put through quite a lot of constitutional changes, and I've been part of the team that has helped you to deliver that. 2 things that I want to do. One is what I see as something very simple, to democratise the board even further and allow our under 35 observers to have a full democratic role in the work of the board. So to introduce an under 35 deputy scheme rather than under 35 observer scheme that still wouldn't cost communities any more money. And the second thing is to build in a new respect and civility code alongside our code of conduct to change the culture of the way we work with each other, because I think if we work with each other better, we're going to achieve far, far more.
Thank you very much. Gentleman at the front with the cap.
Anti-Semitism is obviously a huge talking point across the board for all 4 of you. Most of it in this country, I would say, is probably being led by misinformation and the propaganda in the media. How are you going to stop it? Like, how are you going to stop the BBC just telling what Hamas are telling them to say? How are you going to stop the Daily Mail? How are you going to stop these guys from misinformation and lies?
Thank you very much. Michael.
So, as part of my manifesto, I'm going to set up a media response team, a team of people who I will draw upon, the deputies, I will draw upon some of the top people in the country who will work together in terms of investigating on a regular basis. I've talked to somebody already who's prepared to work with me on day one and is ready to start, where we start to deal with the BBC and look very hard at, it's not only the BBC, it's Sky, it's ITV, and start to get more accurate information, not the misinformation that is getting put out. So anti-Semitism from that perspective we've really got to get to grips with it through the use of our contacts and the organisations that I'm going to set up, which will be made up of deputies and experts. Thank you.
Thank you. Amanda.
Thanks, Matthew, and thanks for the question. I think the first thing to do is I'd build on what we've already done. We have a reporting bias at bod.org.uk email address where we get regular examples of people giving us examples of misinformation, disinformation, and media bias. I'm going to build on our media bias working group, which has been building up dossiers of information so that when we go to talk to media owners, we've got information and data to respond to them with. And I'm going to create a AAAU, an advocacy alert and action unit, so that we can tackle and create a rapid response when information is inaccurate and there's misinformation. When we can send out alerts before a phone-in program to get people to get more involved. We can draft letters and we can encourage deputies to write letters. We can advise the community when we need to have a restrained response to things, because it's not everything that we need to be responding to. And we can train deputies on how to respond to media bias too.
Thank you very much. Sheila.
Thank you. I think we need to work with other organisations who have got the skills and the contacts to get to these TV places, to the Jewish press. I keep coming back to this because, we have the opportunity to get our own positive messages across. I went to an amazing event called Stand With Us that educated 180 18-year-olds from this school and other Jewish schools on how to combat things they're reading 24/7 on TikTok, which is their only access to the news of what's happening. And there were techniques there that they helped them to be able to challenge what they're reading and to be able to either ignore it, which is often the best thing to do, or to fight back. But we need our own positive messages. There are people in this room who have contacts with the BBC. There are other organisations that we can work with. We need to have our own positive messages there. It's not enough just to be aware of what's going on. I think we need to shout louder, this is my message, than our enemies. And whatever they're saying, we need to shout louder and get our message across.
Thank you. And Phil?
Well, thank you very much, Dan. It's a really important question. As you may know, part of my background is I'm in communications, and so this is something that matters a lot to me. Currently, we're not doing enough. I've written a couple of times to the reporting bias channel, and basically you get no response, and sort of smoke appears and sound in the background, but nothing happens. And I think part of that is a lack of capacity. So a day one commitment from me in my 100-day plan, which I released, is on day one to begin to advertise from a media and social media rebuttal person who'll both be able to tackle these issues as they come in and also develop videos and things to counter things that are happening on TikTok and Instagram so that we have proper assets to counter some of the challenges that we have. I've also, in the manifesto, talk about a commission on anti-Semitism, part of which is a comprehensive review of what's been happening in the media since the 7th of October. Because as we know, the BBC commissions its internal reports. We had the Balin report 20 years ago, which never saw the light of day. We need to commission an external report so that we can own that information and then hold the BBC and other media stations' feet to the fire and challenge them, because what we've seen isn't good enough.
Thank you. And just to go to the premise of the question, if I might, I just want to ask each of the candidates whether you would agree that the BBC is systematically biased. Amanda?
Hands up.
Yeah, hands up. I think that the content of the BBC is highly problematic in terms of its reporting on Israel right now. But that's because I'm looking for it, quite frankly. And I know that having talked with some of my Muslim friends, that the same conversations are going on within their community. And so I'm not saying that because there's as much anti-Jewish hatred and misinformation in the BBC as there is anti-Muslim hatred in the BBC, that it's okay. I'm just saying that it's a very complex issue, and it goes beyond the coverage. It goes into, as you've suggested, Matthew, we would need to be looking at hiring and firing policies. We'd need to be looking at a much deeper institutional examination of how the BBC runs before I would say that it is institutionally anti-Semitic.
Thank you. Phil?
Well, the short answer is I think it's institutionally biased. The BBC is massive and it does a lot of good things. There's a lot of really good religious programming content. A lot of the stuff that comes out on the BBC, I think, is really very good and I think is to be celebrated. But I think whenever it comes to issues around Israel, we see far too often, not always, but far too often, incidences of clear bias, where basically the cultural leaning, the essential assumptions of the people developing the news are clearly on one side of the argument rather than the other, because there's no other explanation for why it is so often so wrong. And so I think that's the thing we need to do a whole survey on, because we can't, that's the sentiment, that's how I think many of us feel, but let's prove it by doing a proper review, giving credit where it's due. Sometimes there is credit due. We can't pretend that there aren't good things on the BBC, but pointing out the balance of that and being able to say comprehensively what's happening, getting to behind it, who is making these difficult decisions, where is training needed, where are there changes of personnel needed, and how can we do this better? Because I think we all have an investment in the BBC being better.
Thank you. Sheila?
All I know is I grit my teeth every time I turn on the BBC News at 10. And I'm horrified at what I see. It may be different for people from different communities, but all I care about is the Jewish people in this country and what they're seeing and what they're seeing and what they're looking to the board to do about it. And I believe there are people there with their own agendas, absolutely, and we need to challenge these people. We have meetings behind the scenes. Perhaps we need to let people know we're having these meetings, but we definitely need to challenge it so we're not frightened to watch the news in case, again, Gaza, and we mourn the deaths of all innocent people, but of course they never show that, okay? So, yeah, I think we have a real problem with the BBC and the other news channels.
Thank you. Michael?
Reporting on Israel for years has been biased as far as a large number of us see. This war has upscaled that considerably. My team would be looking, initially trying to find out where those areas of bias exist. But then, before we go and attack them, we'll go and ask them for meetings to sit down and try and work with them to point out how we can try and improve the situation, because we all have a lot to gain by working together. That's the sort of collaborative, cohesive presidency I would bring to the table. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There is indeed. So, gentleman in the third row.
Julian Pollard from Magen Avot in Hendon. Amanda, you touched on interfaith relations, and I want to ask all the candidates, how do they characterise the present state of interfaith relations, given what appears to some to be a complete silence of support from people that should be supporting us?
Sheila.
Thank you, Julian. I've had interfaith meetings with RE groups, religious education groups that I attend. I go to several places where there are people training the police in interfaith groups. I had a Muslim gentleman come to me and say we should go and into schools together to send a positive message. So there are friends out there who don't all hate us and don't all hate what's going on, but they recognise the difficult times we're having. Sometimes things we get on with our work, we do not talk about. It's not the elephant in the room. We're focused on what's important and what we're trying to do. But, we do need to sustain those links and strengthen those links. And in my capacity, right across the UK, I have the organisations I belong to that can do that.
Thank you very much. And can I just point out, I am the only person who can actually have an elephant in the room. Michael.
Interfaith relations. I sit at this moment in time as the Faith and Belief Forum, which is one of the larger interfaith groups in London, as its vice chairman. We have had a very difficult period since the war, and there is no doubt that at this moment in time, the relationships are not where they need to be, and we're going to have to work at that. I am confident that over a period of time, they will come back, but I don't think they'll come back as they were before the 7th of October. I also was approached a couple of months ago to meet with a group of Christian supporters of Israel, some well-known names, and we've got a meeting on Thursday lunchtime with that group of people who are influential in Britain with relationships, and we are all working to see if we can find a way forward to try and improve relations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Amanda.
Thanks. Thanks, Julian. I think for me, in terms of interfaith, there was before October the 7th and after October the 7th. And since October the 7th, interfaith engagement has been really hard. But everything we do adds value, and we have to keep doing it, which is why I pointed it out when we spoke, when I spoke. It's only by being around the table and having those difficult conversations that we can actually change people's perspectives. And we absolutely have to be driving people together rather than apart. Interfaith engagement used to be about finding the things that we had in common. And right now, I think to answer your question, the reason why people are finding it hard to engage in interfaith is because people just don't have the words. We're still grieving, and our interfaith partners, the people we're working with, don't know how to talk to us. And so we need to keep having the conversations when we can, because if we shut down those connections, they're going to be even harder to rebuild as we go forward.
Thank you. And Phil.
Well, thank you. I've been active in interfaith relations for 20 years. I studied Hebrew and Arabic at university, among other things. And boy, is it hard right now. That's absolutely true. But I think we shouldn't be too downcast about it. I mean, I've been in contact just in the last couple of days with Reverend Haley Ace from Christians Against Anti-Semitism, who's leading a very admirable charge for our community. I was speaking to a number of Arab diplomats just today, actually, who kind of very much understand where we're coming from. We've got friends in Christian communities. We've seen a lot of support from the Hindu community. And even in the Muslim community, I've challenged some of the things I've seen in terms of Islamist extremism, and Muslim friends have spoken up against it. I had an incident which I think is illustrative a few weeks ago. I attended an iftar at my local mosque. I'm active in interfaith relations locally, and it was good that I was invited. But afterwards, I shared a message about that online, and an Islamist extremist organization attacked me and the mosque online. They said, the Zionist Phil Rosenberg, who's standing to be president of the Genocidal Board of Deputies, attended this iftar. We should sack the entire leadership of the mosque. And I think that tells you about the problem. We have many friends. There are many moderates, but they are under pressure, as we are, from these extremists. And what we need to do is work together with the moderates to marginalize those extremists, to build bridges across society. And that is the job I will do as president if elected.
Brilliant. Thank you. Lady in the second row.
Hello. I came here. I don't really know anything about three of you, but Phil used to be my counsellor. What has been going on for the last 6 months? I mean, there's grassroots organisations. You spoke about Haley. We're out there counter-demonstrating. We're on X, putting out the truth, not the lies that are going out there. And it feels like often we're on our own doing it. What have you been doing? Because there was actually a Christian event yesterday. There should have been thousands and thousands of Jews on that. And I'm sorry, I can't recognise anybody here. You were there, sorry. You're behind me. There seems to be a complete lack of information going out there. I'm part of a group of 1,000 people now on X doing it daily. Why wasn't this done sooner? I know we were in shock, but there seems to be a complete breakdown. And I know you're all doing your own little things, but there's a lot of us out there trying to get visibility that we're doing stuff.
Thank you. So the question is, what have you been doing these last 6 months? Start with Councillor Phil.
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for everything you've been doing. You know, I've been attending these demonstrations. I've been working with colleagues. As I mentioned, I was speaking to Reverend Ace, and we look to do more work together. I think one of the things that's been challenging in the last 6 months is we see a lot of atomization of efforts, both within our community and beyond. And one of the things we need to do is bring those efforts together and stop fighting each other and start working together in strength. I think one of the challenges, I remember after one of the demonstrations, Christian friends reached out to me and said, why didn't we know about this? It's not advertised. And I think one of the challenges we have to, I'm not saying it's a simple one, but because we're so security conscious, we are very much keen about not telling anyone where it is and so on, which actually prevents our friends getting involved. We have to work out how we get the right balance between absolutely maintaining security and facilitating our friends actually being able to stand alongside us when they want to do it.
Thank you. Amanda.
I just reiterate the thanks for all the work that you're doing. It's so important that everybody does whatever they can do to keep the thoughts about the hostages alive, and that's been a key focus of the work of the Board of Deputies. We held vigils at the very beginning in October, and since then we've been really active in terms of regular briefings for deputies, for members of the Jewish community. We've hosted vigils outside Parliament twice a week, and we keep going, small and steady. But what you're saying is that we need to do more, and we do need to do more, and we need to collaborate more with our communal partners, and we need to be unified in purpose, but we don't all need to be doing all the same things. I think for me, it's small acts are as good as large symbolic acts, and we need both.
Thank you. Michael.
So, at the beginning of the war, I attended the vigils in London and Manchester. When we had the CAA march, which I was probably the most person on the honorary officers that believed that we needed to go ahead with that and pushed it very hard and supported it right the way through. It was my son's wedding that day. I still went on it. So I was there. I wanted to start a war cabinet. We didn't do it. We should have done it, and I should have forced it through right at the beginning so that we were seen to be ahead of the curve and not behind. And what I'm going to do is have a Cobra crisis team to work on these sort of situations when they come again unexpectedly, as that did, and we are able to then react more quickly and in a better way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Sheila.
The board, I've been lambasted, vilified. I've said the board's been invisible because we've not supported the work that people like yourself and your organisations are doing. Yes, we've had vigils for the hostages, we've had education and parent advice, lots of stuff going on like that. But again, I was on the march that Michael was on, and it felt good to be on the street and standing up and being a proud Jew. And I went on the stand with Israel one. I'm a deputy for Cardiff, and they were Welsh Jews, and I marched with them under the dragon and the Israeli flag that day. We need to do more of this stuff. We need to work with other organisations and support their work and to be seen on the streets together where it's safe. Don't have to be confrontational, with the police support, with the CST support, but the board needs to be doing more of this stuff.
Thank you. Gentleman at the back with the multicoloured kippah.
Keith Myers, Edgeware United. Somebody from my shul asked me to ask this. What would you do to address the Islamisation of British politics?
Oh, wonderful.
So, Michael.
Thank you, Keith. For me, I originally came from Leeds. We've seen this week that there is a Green Party who's been appointed, Mothin Ali, who clearly it's going to affect the council. And we, as the Jewish community in Leeds, which I still have connections with, are clearly very worried about the way forward. We need to make sure that we are training younger people who will get involved in politics. We don't have enough people who are interested in politics at the moment, but we do have many young people who go to universities, study politics, and I do think there is an opportunity for us to try to get our voice into the world of politics, both in councils and eventually into the Houses of Parliament. Thank you.
And just to follow up, you accept the premise of the question? The Islamisation of British politics?
I don't think that we have yet achieved that status. I don't think we're there yet.
Sheila.
There's absolutely the potential. It's frightening. Keir Starmer being asked 18 conditions under which, the Muslim voice, the Muslim vote, want to be able to support the Labour Party by certain conditions. I was listening to it on the news on the way here. It's frightening. We stood up to Jeremy Corbyn and Keir Starmer took over, but these people haven't gone away. They're all out there. And we've got to have meetings. We've got to rely on the politicians to support us and protect us, because these people have gone to the Green Party in many cases. They're not being vetted. We need to, again, meet with people, discuss the process by which these people stand as candidates. We need to stamp on it, because like everything else, if we're not on top of it, it's only going to get worse.
Thank you. Phil.
I would gently push back against the term. I think it's important that we say that actually we want all different communities to be active in politics, and that's right and appropriate, and we should have dialogue across communities. I think we do have to stand up, though, and I made this point earlier, to Islamist extremism. And when there are incidents that kind of tend in that direction, there's worries about the Green Party particularly, we do have to stand up with clarity. As I said, I had an experience just a few weeks ago that showed the difference. There are many moderate Muslims in this country who are our friends, probably the majority, and we need to work with them to marginalise these Islamist extremists. Some of the things we've seen on the streets, the way that MPs like Mike Freer have been targeted, have been absolutely unacceptable, and we need to stand up to that. But I would resist that exact term. I think we need to be clear about who is the opposition here and who are our friends.
Thank you. Amanda.
Thanks, Keith. I think clearly it's a question that's come from a member of your community, and similar to Phil, I think I would feel that it's not necessarily a term that I would be comfortable with. I'd like to think that that's not the general view of most of us. However, I equally understand that in a situation where clearly the Labour Party feel they lost votes in the local elections, that there are going to be questions asked from them. 18 demands from Muslim vote. I've spoken with different stakeholders just today when I read about it to try and get a sense of what people feel about that as a movement. And clearly there are things in those 18 demands that are shocking, and some of them are very troubling. But what I would say is that as the Jewish community, the Board of Deputies leads on what we call the Jewish Manifesto. That's the way that we deal with things. And over the last 6 months, we've gone out through our stakeholders, through our deputies, back into communities to look at the issues that we believe are important to our Jewish community, and that's the way we will advocate to government on our Jewish Manifesto.
Thank you. Right, I think we'll make this the last question from the floor. Jerry.
Jerry Lewis, father of the board. You laugh, but it sometimes is useful. I've done 3 terms as vice president, including a term as senior. And I know one thing is vital. That's teamwork. I've seen all of you over the years working very hard for the board. The question I have is a very simple one, and it's aimed at one particular candidate, and with no disrespect, who's done a very effective campaign. On occasions, there have been incidents which have raised major concerns. One, the agreement to set up an all-party group on the Board of Deputies, and the advice from everybody was, don't do it, because we've got a group already on anti-Semitism and on Israel. and getting tangled up with the Commons regulations is difficult. Second of all, on the census.
So,
where
Jerry, what is the question?
Just give me a second. On the census, the advice, the policy of the board was, we want an ethnic question. That's not what was sent in, and you were in charge at the time. And third one, not covered yet, but the whole issue of what happened with Scotland and Skojec, where an attempt was made, not hitherto revealed, to set up a rival organisation with different people. That was right out of order, rank out of order, not any part of teamwork. My question is, I'd like to hear what the individual concerned has got to say on each of those, just 3 selected ones, and how the other candidates will deal with teamwork.
I think, feel free to, I think you're the candidate in question.
I possibly am.
So I think respond generically to the point.
I'm very proud of my record in the Board of Deputies. You know, for the 16 years I've been involved in the board, we fought anti-Semitism in Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party and sent it packing. We got Hamas and Hezbollah prescribed. We led the community through coronavirus. We brought the first Haredi deputy in 50 years from Stamford Hill onto the board. We brought the first regional manager onto the board. And if elected president, I will take forward that record to ever new heights. I'm happy to engage with each and every one of those things, but I could give you a lecture on each of them. But I think that the point is, I stand on my record, I'm proud of it, and I look forward to delivering more in the next 3 years as president. Thank you.
And in the interests of balance, I'm going to ask the other 3 candidates to tell us something they've done that they're proud of. Michael.
So I've chaired the Treasury and I've chaired the F&O committee. I believe that I've created a very cohesive group, and most important of all, we've got to grips. When I took over, there was a problem in terms of money outflow, and we have all worked together now to ensure that we're running a balanced budget. Secondly, I think that I've demonstrated leadership, particularly in relationship with dealing with universities, and in particular with Leeds University in the last 24 hours. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheila.
Thank you, Matthew. When I took over the Communities and Education Division in 2015, outreach education wasn't even on the list of priorities. I spent the 3 years there devising, creating, updating the Jewish Living Experience exhibition. There are now 5 copies with the help of Michael as CEO and the board's backing, 3 copies all over the UK, and tens of thousands of Jewish school children have had the opportunity to learn about being Jewish, and I made that my priority when I became vice president.
Thank you. Amanda, something you're proud of?
Thank you. Well, I'm proud that I was one of the HOs that helped Phil to get all the achievements that he's already discussed. But whether it's leading campaigns or standing up for our community, I've always believed in making a difference, and I think that I can prove that I've made a difference within the work that I've done for the board. There are different ways to lead a team, and my experience as vice chair under Sheila in the Communities Division and chair of the Defence Division is that I've demonstrated that I can bring people with me and I bring the best out of people, and that's really important. I'm collaborative, I nurture good ideas wherever they come from. They don't just have to be my ideas. I provide the guide rails for people. I help to set objectives, and then I let people get on with it because I believe in empowering and collaboration. Thank you.
And if you were going to say one thing that you're proud of?
Oh, I'm proud of all the work, all the working groups that my division have done, and the fact that we've increased and expanded the work that we've done.
Thank you. We have a little more time, so let's just change course slightly. Would anyone like to ask a question not about anti-Semitism? In the front.
Hi, Stephen Rodofsky, Shomer Yadah Synagogue in West Hampstead. I've been a member for just over a year, and I've been to, 15 or 20 hours of the plenaries. And a question to all of you, in my observation, there's a lot of wasted time. So we marshal these enormous resources for all of us to aggregate or to congregate together. And it's sort of co-opted or sort of kidnapped by very, very vocal people that take us in weird directions. So my question to you as presidents, or as a president, or future president, can you figure out a way to make these plenaries productive, focused, coherent, and directional?
What a great question. Phil.
Thank you very much. This is a really, really important question, because I know a lot of people come to these meetings and they find them rancorous and a bit of a waste of time. I'm the only candidate proposing to have an independent chair for board meetings to change the dynamic of how those work and professionalise them in the way that they run. I wanted every meeting a substantive discussion and debate. You'll have seen in my manifesto there are 8 sections, there are 8 plenaries a year, go figure. There are the 8 subjects, unless something else comes up, that we'll discuss a whole range of topics, and not just Israel every time. Israel is important, but we'll discuss a whole range of things as well. And one of the things I think is really important, I want to innovate with a Kiddush-style reception at the end of board meetings to give deputies an opportunity to network and get to know each other. It's not a frivolous suggestion. Actually, one of the things we need to do is build a team, and while people might disagree on some issues, actually getting people together, getting them to know each other is a great network, important opportunity, and particularly regional deputies have said that they would appreciate that. But it's not just the board meetings themselves that are important. We need to have snap votes, use digital technology to have polls between meetings. We need to make the divisions better. And we need to do a whole range of things. The point I make is that this is a cultural change from the top down, and that's why on day one I want to put into the field a deputy empowerment officer to change the culture of the board from the beginning to end. By the end, we'll have 300 deputies active and engaged right around the country, engaging with their MPs, councillors, faith leaders and media, and we'll raise the tide for everyone.
Thank you. Amanda.
You're going to hear a lot of repeating themes because we've all been talking to deputies and we've been hearing from them what they want. So, time and place, whether we do more meetings in London or outside of London, what time of days, because people don't want to use up all of their Sundays. I've already talked about culture change and the increase and the introduction of my respect and civility code, because there should never be a time when people don't feel that they can stand up and speak because they're worried that they're going to be shouted down, or that they don't know the answer to the question and that and therefore they might be pilloried. More discussion and debate. It's often not just the president that knows the answer to the questions that might be asked, and there'll be an opportunity when I'm president for people to be able to contribute in that way. We can't put the genie back in the bottle. That Zoom is there and people will still want to attend virtually. But there is an in-person premium, and so that when we bring people together, and I've committed to do at least one full-day board meeting a year, when we do that, but not just on the 1 days, when people come together, there'll be opportunities to have briefings afterwards, so we can deep dive into issues. We'll bring in speakers to bring people up to date with some of the issues that we'll be discussing. And in between times, we'll have policy dialogues so that we can also discuss policy in more detail. And I'll be doing presidential surgeries both around the country and for deputies at least once a month.
Thank you. Sheila.
I'm a deputy for Cardiff United Synagogue, and most of my predecessors told me, don't bother going because it's an old man's talking shop. They only want you there because they want your vote. And in some respects, it's not changed. I believe it's the job of the president to lead the plenaries. If they want to have a debate about whether or not we should have an independent chair, nothing is off the table. But the point of being the president is that you lead by example, which doesn't mean you have to hog the whole meeting with your own monologues, which means you have a team of honorary officers who have got their own areas of responsibility. And I believe we need to engender a culture of respect, so people are basically feeling embarrassed that they won't stand and hog the microphone, because people won't need to be rude or shout sit down, because they'll know that it is a new era under a new listening president.
Thank you. Michael.
I guess everybody will have said the same thing. So very quickly, for me, the plenaries show a lot of lack of respect by people at the meetings. And I want to change that. I saw that in my synagogue at Western Marble Arch when I was president, and I changed it. And it's about making sure everybody partakes in the meeting. So what am I going to do? For a start, 4 meetings of the year, I would start at 12 o'clock so that we could get a lot more people into London and finish at about 4 o'clock. I'd make them interesting. I'd have really top-class speakers at the beginning and the end, and I have those people who have already been to and talked to me who are top-class, interesting people who will come and speak. I would have a quarter of an hour each on 2 synagogues, your synagogue, somebody else's synagogue, liberal, reform, whatever the different groups are, together with 2 charities, presenting and talking about what they do and making it interesting so people understand what they do. And then finally, I would have a debate around important issues, around the strategy of the board, and bring people to have a breakout session, and I would serve a bit of food on the way through because I think they'd be a bit tired and a bit hungry. But thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. And this will be the last question from the floor, because I don't know about the candidates, but I'm knackered. So, gentlemen at the front.
Thank you very much. David Mendoza-Wolfson, I'm the current Senior Vice President of the board. Now, of course, this election is run on STV, so yours won't be the only name you have to tick. If you want to tell us who you'd stick as your second preference, I'm sure everyone in here would be interested. That said, I understand if you don't, so I would just be interested to hear what each of you thinks each of the others has that would make them a good president. Thank you.
Nice question. Amanda.
Okay. So I'll go this way. So Phil has lots and lots of ideas, and I love his ideas. I just wish I knew how he was going to pay for it. Sheila has masses of energy, and she's got a real focus on education, and education is so important. And I'm really, really pleased that Sheila has that focus and understanding, because it's really valuable to all of us at the board. And Michael has a lot of experience. He's been around the Jewish community for many years, and he's had leadership roles in the community for many years. He's also got a firm hand on the button of the finances, and that's a very important asset.
Thank you. Phil.
Well, I'm very fond of all of my colleagues here, and I've said in my first 100-day plan that I'd offer all of them a role, because I think it'd be good to harness all of their energies. If I'm to say one thing I like about each of them, it's this. I think Sheila offers change, and I think we do need change. I think Amanda offers competence, and we need competence. And Michael offers experience, and we need experience. But if you want all 3 of those things, change, competence, and experience, then vote for me. Thank you.
Sheila.
Thank you. Amanda, you're planning, you're strategizing. You work for, you were my vice chair, and I used to take my hat off to you because you were so focused, and your planning and strategy and carrying things out. Commendable, commendable. I actually learned a lot from you 6 years ago. Phil, media, communications, connecting with young people, having your reach within the Labour Party, it's amazing what the things that you can achieve. And Michael, your business, your finance, your expertise, and your standing in the community stand you in good stead.
Thank you. Michael.
Phil, I'll start with you first and then ladies second, if that's all right. Youth, ideas, I do concern myself about costs, but well done for all of those that you've come up with. Sheila, your knowledge about education, about the community, about the regions is wonderful. The energy and change that you would bring is great. Amanda, your experience, your knowledge, you're great to be with, your strategic thinking is wonderful. All 3 of you, I'd want you to be part of my cabinet and part of working with me going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that extremely positive question. We will shortly move to the closing statement from each of the candidates. Before we do, can I just ask each, if you were to have when deputies vote, have one question in their minds that they're asking themselves as they cast their vote, what question would you like them to be asking? Phil.
I think I want them to be asking, do we need change? Could we do things better? And that would be the question I want them to ask.
Thank you. Sheila.
Who do you want to be the voice and the face of the community, to be loud and proud and represent the board and regain respect for our amazing organisation?
Thank you. Amanda.
I think I'd want them to be asking why we want to be standing for president.
Thank you. Michael.
I'd ask them who will be a great leader in this very difficult situation that we're currently facing as a Jewish community, and who has got the network to be able to go and see those people that will help us. Thank you.
Brilliant. So we'll move to the closing statements. I think it's a minute each in an order determined by the Chief Executive's random number generator, starting with Phil.
Well, it's falling over. First of all, a huge thank you to you, Matthew. For a generation of us that grew up, seeing you as ambassador to Israel was a huge mark of pride, showing us how we can be both proudly British and how proudly Jewish, and I want to thank you for that and for the way you've chaired tonight's event. In the spirit of In the spirit of Pesach, which has just passed, I want to ask 4 questions. Who is most likely to represent the community best on question time? Who is going to be best able to communicate with the TikTok generation? Who has the strongest connections across politics, the media, faith and diplomacy? And who has the best ideas to take this organisation forward? I put it to you that the answer to all those questions is the same, and so I ask for your vote on the 12th of May. In the meantime, thank you so much for coming. Good evening, and Am Yisrael Chai. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael.
Matthew, thank you very much indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, the role of President is to ensure that everyone has a voice. A vote for me is your insurance that the community will be collaboratively led. I will involve you and respect you, changing our culture for the better and allowing you to use all your talents for the good of our community. We will tackle the big issues of our day, form strong partnerships with key organisations. The board, under my leadership, will cooperate with the charities and ensure we're effective as a community. Together, we are stronger, combining women, men, young people, and by collaborating, we'll change the culture and respect for each of us. We can only do this together, listening to each other and empowering the others. This is a serious time for serious leadership, and that is why I am seeking your vote. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sheila.
Thank you. Thank you. I have served as Vice President, Senior Vice President, deputising for the President on many occasions. I have the skills, the experience, the passion, the time, the commitment and the energy to lead the board and regain respect for the board. My priorities would be to shout louder than our enemies, to show strength through solidarity and to educate about being Jewish and about Israel. And I want to end with a paraphrase from the great Hillel in the Pirkei Avot. If we are not for ourselves, who will be for us? If we are only for ourselves, what are we? If not now, when?
Thank you. And Amanda.
I'm asking for your vote to be the next Board of Deputies President. As your Vice President of Defence, you've seen me fight the rising tide of hate and defend and protect our rights and traditions. I've been representing you and all British Jews for the last 6 years, with government, civil society and the media, and I have the experience we so need right now to forge a stronger, more resilient community. As your next President, expects strong leadership rooted in service to the community. It's one thing building palaces out of promises. The purity of theory always trumps the messiness of reality. But what I promise is to be resilient, to protect and unify our glorious, diverse community in purpose. And together, we'll create a board that's the proud voice of British Jews, that serves as a beacon of hope and strength for the next 3 years, and when we get it right, for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, and I see I'll hand over to Michael, but before I do, could I just ask everyone to join me in one big round of applause for all the candidates. Michael.
So